Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar here at BINA. So what sparked interest in today's subject, why I thought about it, is due to very unfortunate events in the world right now. I'm sure everyone's aware of the terrible hurricane in Texas in America, and unfortunately many people are in danger and many lives have been lost. And obviously, just before I start, many people have donated a lot of money, and many tremendously brave people, even regular people, but people who are police and law enforcement and all those type of people, have gone out to save people and are literally saving lives. And whatever we're going to discuss today has nothing to do with that, because most of the people there are people which are stuck there from no fault of their own. A lot of them tried to evacuate, but got stopped by floods and terrible rain and terrible winds. So today we're actually going to focus on something totally different, but just connected to this concept, because this is obviously a forum where we discuss halachic questions and interesting topics. So this is just an interesting question, an interesting moral question. And a halachic question is, are we obligated to save somebody who put themselves in danger? So again, to emphasize, obviously, most of what's going on now does not fall under this category. Either people tried to leave or couldn't leave, or etc., all those type of stuff. Here I'm asking a different question. What happens if somebody was able to leave, no problem at all, was not disabled, had no issues, had plenty of time to leave, which probably wasn't the case in this hurricane, but didn't leave, and now they're in danger? Are we obligated to go and save them? Am I obligated to take risks, pay money to go and save such a person? So what we really need to examine over here is, first of all, how do we know that we're obligated to save people in general? And just before I go further, we're not talking about over here doing the right thing, or going beyond the letter of the law, or being a good person. Whoever wants to go and save people, kol hakavod to them. What we're discussing over here now, what's the obligation to save somebody? A lot of things are good to do. It's a good thing to give thousands of dollars to charity. Am I obligated to do that? Not necessarily. I'm obligated to give a certain amount of charity, but I'm not obligated to give an immense amount of charity. Right? It would be amazing if I did, but I'm not obligated to. So here we're trying to go down to the very root of the issue. Who says I'm obligated to save another person? So the obligation actually comes from a very interesting source. The Torah tells us, "V'hashevoto lo," which means you should return it to him. What is this talking about? This is talking about if I'm walking in the street and I find a lost object, something that belongs to somebody else, I am obligated to do all I can to return that object. Obviously, there are exceptions. Sometimes the object cannot be identified. There's no distinct signs. So therefore, I'm not obligated to return it. But in most cases, I'm obligated to return somebody's lost object. The Talmud tells us that from here we learn out not only that I'm obligated to return someone's lost object to them, but I'm also obligated to return, so to speak, their lost body to them. Meaning, if somebody is losing their health, if somebody is losing their life, losing their body, I am obligated to help them out and to save them as much as I can, and to try and return their health or their life back to them, so to speak. Then we have another verse, another pasuk, which tells us, Lo ta'amod al dam re'acha, which means do not stand on the blood of your friend. Which means that I'm not allowed to stand idly by when someone is in danger. Why do we need two sources for this? So the Talmud tells us that the second source, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, not to stand on the blood of your fellow, comes to teach us that not only am I obligated to save somebody if I have the opportunity to do so, but I'm even obligated to put down money to do so. So if I am not able to, I am obligated to donate to a cause which does, or to hire somebody to go and save people. Now, which people we're obligated to save? Are we obligated to save everyone in the entire world? That's a separate discussion. But in a general sense, we are obligated to save someone's life who is in danger. So here's the question. Am I obligated to save someone's life who put themselves in that dangerous situation? Or what happens if somebody is trying to take their own life and they actually are even not only before, but right now opposing to you saving their life? Am I obligated to save their life anyway? And all of these type of questions. So the Minchas Chinuch, a great commentary on the book called the Chinuch, has the following opinion. And this is going to be based on what we just said, that the obligation to save someone's life is based on the obligation to return someone's lost object. So we need to examine this. In whatever case a person would be obligated to return a lost object, in a similar case a person would be obligated to return their lost body and life and health. In a case where a person would not be obligated to return a lost object, they would not either be obligated, again I stress obligated, if they want to go and do so, you're an amazing person and God will reward you for it. But we're talking about an obligation. In such a case, I would not be obligated to. So he says like this, let's compare the cases. If let's say I go outside right now and take my wallet and put it on the street. I don't declare it ownerless, it still belongs to me, I didn't give anybody permission to take it, but I put it in the middle of the street. In such a case, it is obvious that if someone else walks by that wallet, they are not obligated to return it to me. Because I went and lost it on purpose. I put it in a place where I know if someone's going to take it, the most probable outcome over here is that I'm not going to get it back. Right? So now it's still stealing to take it. Someone who takes that wallet is still stealing because I didn't declare it what's called hefker. I didn't make it ownerless. But they are not obligated to return it to me. Says the Minchas Chinuch, if you're comparing returning a lost object, saving someone's life, which is where we learn out the obligation to save someone's life from, then the same thing would be if somebody put themselves totally voluntary in a dangerous situation. If a person got warning, for example, to bring example in connection to current events, if someone got warning that there's a flood coming, and they had ample amount of time to escape, and they didn't, and it was totally voluntary. We're not talking about most of the cases. We're not talking about people which got stuck there, or they were disabled and weren't able to leave, whatever the case is. We're talking about somebody who just ignored all warnings, decided that they know better, and stayed there anyway. According to the Minchas Chinuch, you would not be obligated. You can if you want to, but you can't obligate us to go and save such a person if they put themselves to begin with in that dangerous situation. So that's the opinion of the Minchas Chinuch. However, it's not so simple. Because again, using the analogy of losing a lost object, so he wants to say that it's identical to me going to put my wallet in the middle of the street is me putting my life in danger. However, it's not so simple. Because other opinions say that our bodies actually don't belong to us. So let's first of all establish that rule and prove that, and then we'll connect it back to the topic at hand. The Rambam, Maimonides, says a fascinating thing. He says, let's say a person is a murderer, and in olden times when we had a high court, we had a Sanhedrin, there were two witnesses and they were sentenced to death. They got the death sentence, which is the sentence which Torah gives for a murderer. What happens if the victim's family, in other words, the one who this person murdered, that person's family objects to the murderer getting killed? They say, we don't want to take revenge, we don't believe in a death sentence, I don't want this murderer to get killed, we are the ones which suffered as a result of him, put him in jail, fine, to protect society, but I don't want him to get killed. Nevertheless, says the Rambam, Torah would still obligate the high court in such a case to sentence that person to death. Why, says the Rambam? Because the body belongs to God, not to the victim's family and not to themselves. And therefore it is not up to anybody what happens to this person. This person committed a sin of capital offense, and God decided in his Torah that the law is that this person should be sentenced to death. Therefore this person needs to be sentenced to death. It makes absolutely no difference what the victim's family has to say, because the body does not belong to them, it belongs to God. Another very interesting law which brings this out. Let's say a person walks into the high court, again in times when they did this, when they had capital punishment, walked into the high court and said, I committed an offense which deserves capital punishment. I'm admitting, I'm voluntary, I walked into the high court and I'm admitting that I did this. Why would a person do that? Maybe they wanted to do tshuva, maybe they wanted to repent, they wanted to own up to their wrongdoings, and they walked in and said, there are no witnesses, but I committed this and this act, and therefore I deserve to die. The halacha is that the high court cannot kill the person based on their own testimony. Unlike if I would walk into court and say, I owe Jack money, then the court could obligate me to pay Jack money based on my own testimony. What's the difference? So the Radvaz, one of the commentaries on the Rambam, explains as follows. The difference is that my money belongs to me. Therefore, when I confess about my own money, I can obligate myself to pay someone money. But my body does not belong to me. And therefore, by me coming and confessing something which would result in the court killing me, taking my life, I have no permission to do that because my body does not belong to me. My body belongs to God. And the only way a person can be killed by the high court if there is two witnesses, because that is what God says. Fascinating stuff, but what comes out of this is that a person's body doesn't belong to them. If that's the case, so now the comparison between the two cases might be a little different. Instead of comparing it to me taking my wallet and putting it out into the street, and therefore no one has an obligation to return it to me, so to a person who endangers themselves, no one has the obligation to save me. Instead of comparing it to that, compare it to something different. It's like me taking your wallet and putting it in the street. Of course people would have an obligation to return it to you, because I took something that doesn't belong to me and was negligent with it. Of course people would be obligated to return it to its original owner. So if you go with the premise that our bodies don't belong to us, then by me endangering myself, I'm actually endangering something which doesn't belong to me. And therefore people would be obligated to come and save me because I endangered or I was negligent with God's possession, not my own. And therefore I don't have a choice over the matter. And therefore people would be obligated to come and save me. And that is the opinion of many halachic authorities, that even if somebody put themselves in a dangerous situation willingly, you would still be obligated to save that person. Just an interesting, and we'll finish off with this, an interesting proof for the Minchas Chinuch's opinion that we're not obligated to save someone who put themselves in danger. There's a fascinating story about the sage Hillel. Hillel, one of the greatest sages. And when he was studying, he once arrived at the study hall and he didn't have enough money to pay the entrance fee. So he climbed on the roof where there was like some sort of skylight where he was able to hear the classes in the study hall. But what happened was it was snowing and he was so involved in the lesson that he got buried under the snow and he almost froze to death. The next morning, which was Shabbos morning, they came and they saw it was dark in the room and they discovered him on the roof. They actually heated up fire for him on Shabbos to save his life, which is what we do to save people's life. But what's interesting about that story is that Shmaya and Avtalion, which were the two teachers of that yeshiva, said that we can break Shabbos because this person is worthy that we should break the Shabbos on him. It's worth it to save his life, to break Shabbos, it's still worth it. The obvious question is, we break Shabbos for any life. Even a baby which is 1 day old, we break Shabbos to save that life. What did they mean that, Hillel, he's such a great guy, we'll break Shabbos to save him? Perhaps if you go with the view of the Minchas Chinuch, that you're not obligated to save someone who endangered themselves, this can fall under that category. He climbed onto the roof, in a snowstorm, he endangered his life. So therefore, normally we would not be obligated to save his life. It's just that he's such a great sage, says Shmaya and Avtalion, he's such a great teacher to the Jewish people, this person would be worth it to save their life. That could be a proof for the view of the Minchas Chinuch that if somebody endangers himself, we're not obligated to save their life. Now obviously, again, to finish off, to reiterate the fact that this is all talking about basic obligation. If you want to be a good person and you want to go out of your way to save people's lives, you would go out of your way to save anyone's life. Here we're talking about when are we obligated by the Torah to save their life. God should help that we shouldn't have to come onto these type of things, and God should protect all people who find themselves in a dangerous situation. Have a wonderful day.